There has been some craziness right now. Michael Burry has basically said that the Fed is lying about inflation.
Yeah.
Bill Ackman has been giving out some pretty serious warnings about inflation and has said that the Fed needs to step up interest rates right now. What is going on?
Yeah, we've been talking about this a lot on our YouTube channel, partially because it's becoming a bigger and bigger deal as time goes on.
Right.
In a video that I recently recorded, I kind of went through a time lapse of inflation in 2021. In the early part of 2021, towards March, April, that's when inflation started to become a thing that people were really talking about. Obviously, we were talking about it in 2020. As soon as the money printer started, we started talking about inflation and what could potentially happen. And then we started to see the effects of it in 2021. And so when we started to see the effects, that's when people started to talk about it. In March, April of 2021, we saw inflation at its highest levels since around 2008. So that's when you started to hear a little bit of talk about inflation. Hey, the prices of things are going up. And then right after that talk started happening, that's the first time the Fed came out and they started really emphasizing this whole idea of inflation is transitory. So this is like early 2021. Fed is saying inflation is transitory. Don't worry about it. It should cool down by the end of the year, 2021. Then came the middle part of 2021, and the Fed almost said, I told you so. Because in the middle part, June, July of 2021, that's when inflation started to cool down. It was still high relative to previous year's inflation, but it was less than where it was in the early part of 2021 temporarily. So the Fed said, see, inflation's transitory. It's cooling down. By the end of 2021, inflation will be all better. And that's when President Joe Biden also came out and got on the side of the Fed, said the Fed should keep doing whatever they need to do. It's working. It's getting the economy running. Inflation is under control. Nothing to worry about. Then in August of 2021, inflation started to pick back up a little bit and the economy didn't grow as fast as we would have liked. And then in September, that's when things started to get bad. In September 2021, inflation started to now really ramp back up again. The economy was not growing as fast. We saw one of the worst economic reports in September. Jobs were not coming back, but inflation was growing significantly faster than before. So now in September, we were having higher inflation than we saw in the early parts of the year. So now we're getting close to breaking records in September. Then came October of 2021, and now inflation just breaks all sorts of records. By October of 2021, inflation is at its 30-year high. And so now people are, that's when the real alarm bell started hitting in October. Like October was when every media outlet was like, holy cow, this inflation thing is real. Like something's going on here. Then came November, and obviously the Fed started to get a little nervous because everybody was like, holy crap, what's going on with inflation? What is inflation? People started to get really worried because we saw massive amounts of inflation around that time. November, the Fed came out, had their meeting, and obviously they don't want people to worry about inflation, so they came out and they said inflation is transitory again. It was really funny because like this was when like November was when the media outlets started to like kind of make fun of the Fed, kind of call BS, because they started saying the Fed keeps singing the same transitory bells. They keep like before, in the early part of the year, anytime you heard the media talk about inflation and the Fed saying it's transitory, they would always say the same thing. The Fed said it's transitory, nothing to worry about. And then you'd have these like lone people that would come out and say, Michael Burry would come out and say that the Fed is lying about inflation, and then whatever. So it was kind of like these like little outliers that said, hey, this inflation might be worse than we think. We expected, or the Fed rather, expected that inflation would be gone by the end of 2021. Then came the end of 2021 and inflation is not gone, rather it is much higher than expected. So what happens? Well, then in the end of 2021, November, the Fed came out and they said, yes, we understand inflation right now is a little bit higher than what we expected, but it will be gone by 2022. So it went from being gone in the middle part of 2021 to being gone at the end of 2021 to now being gone in the mid of 2022. Now let's see what happens. But this is where you have more and more people popping up saying, hey, this inflation is actually a real concern. Like this is something we gotta start thinking about. And everybody that I've interviewed on our channel has had similar sentiment. I brought on Peter Schiff, the economist, he talked about how, yeah, inflation is a real concern. He's really worried about inflation. He says it's going to get significantly worse in 2022. That's why he's been moving a big portion of his portfolio into gold. He hates Bitcoin. He hates that whole side of things, cryptocurrency. So he's been moving a lot of money to gold because if the value of the dollar crashes, well, that makes commodities like gold go up. We talked to Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki has a very not a good outlook on our economy. He says we're going into a depression. He says this whole dollar is going to collapse. I talked to Michael Saylor and Raul Paul, both very big in the cryptocurrency space. Michael Saylor, the CEO and founder of MicroStrategy.
Sure.
He was the guy that bought 114,000 Bitcoins in 2020, spent $3 billion buying Bitcoins. And for these crypto guys, same thing. So we have different fields of space: crypto, non-crypto, general money. The Bitcoin guys are saying the same thing, that hey, the economy is recovering, but their worry is the dollar, because we are creating inflation. And so that now you go into what Michael Burry said. Michael Burry says the Fed is lying. The reason why he says the Fed is lying is because when the Fed is trying to increase inflation, well, why does the Fed want to increase inflation? Because in the Fed's opinion, the way that you grow the economy faster is by creating more inflation. Because if we can keep interest rates low, if we can keep printing money, then corporations will have more dollars to reinvest back into their companies. Cheap dollars, they'll be able to borrow money very cheaply. And if they can borrow money cheaply, they can open up a new manufacturing plant. They can open up a new restaurant. They can open up a new store. They'll be able to hire more people. They'll be able to invest in their growth. So as long as corporations and people can keep borrowing money cheaply, this will grow the economy. And includes people, because if interest rates are low, you're more likely to go out and buy a home. If more people are buying homes, well then, what does that mean? Well, now real estate agents have business, mortgage companies have business, title companies have business. All these companies continue to have more business, right? So it fuels the economy. Contractors keep going to work. So in their eyes, low interest rates, high inflation is good because it helps grow the economy faster. And then they also want to create inflation because the government has $29 trillion or so of debt, national debt, and the only way they can pay that back is if they create inflation, because now they can pay back this national debt cheaper. So now, why is this a concern? Well, let's go through the scenarios, because I don't know what's going to happen. I can't predict the future, but there's a few different things that can happen. And based off of that, you want to make your decisions with your money smartly. So the first answer is the Fed is right. The Fed is right, meaning inflation is transitory come 2022, or let's just say 2023. All inflation goes away. Prices go back down for everything. Wages go up. Prices go down. The economy is booming. If that's the situation, well, you really have nothing to worry about. You can keep your money in the bank. Maybe you lose a little bit of value between 2021 and 2022, maybe 2023. But big deal, the price of things will drop, so you would be benefited by just saving your money. So in this case, no matter what you do, you'll come out a winner. So if the Federal Reserve Bank is right, we don't see inflation, we see inflation go back down, no problem. Option number 2 is, what if the Fed is kind of wrong? So we do continue to see inflation, but we see just moderate inflation. We see a little bit high, but kind of moderate, nothing out of the ordinary. So what about that? Well, if that's the case, then your savings will continue to lose value. Asset prices will continue to go up. And we could talk about the economic side in just a bit, but you have the issue of now people's wealth getting hurt. It's harder for the average person to go out and invest, because if you see inflation, well, now your dollar is less, so you're earning this money from your job. These earnings don't stretch as far. You save money, it doesn't stretch as far, can't buy you as much. And now when you want to go and buy stocks, or you want to buy real estate, or you want to buy cryptocurrency or gold or whatever it is, all these assets are more expensive, not because they're necessarily more valuable, but just because the value of the dollars you want to use to buy them don't stretch as far, it's not as powerful. And then you have option 3, where the Fed is really wrong. And this is where things get scary. If that happens, I don't know if that's going to happen. I also don't know the likelihood, because we've seen money printing happen for decades now, and so far we've been okay, but I'm going to address that in just a second. But if the Fed is really wrong, well, now we have real concerns on our hand. If the Fed is really wrong, what does that mean? That means essentially that the dollar crashes. If the dollar crashes, that's a big problem. Because, yeah, we have a strong economy, but that means other countries around the world don't really care about the dollar. People are dumping the dollar. The value of the dollar goes down. And now you start to see really high inflation. Maybe not hyperinflation, but really high inflation. If you start to see really high inflation, well, now a few things are going to happen. The Fed would have to now start actively fighting inflation. How do you actively fight inflation? By doing the opposite of what causes inflation. If inflation is by increasing the monetary supply, the way you fight inflation would be decrease the monetary supply.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this shorter clip from my longer videos, here's another clip that I think you'll love. And if you're interested in learning more about how to invest your money in the stock market, our team put together an amazing guide that will walk you through how to invest your money in the stock market. This guide is completely free when you sign up for our daily newsletter. So if you want to read this guide, all you got to do is click that button right over there. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep hustling.